Hi, this is Mary Jo Mueller with IBM. For this module, important, all VPAT editions and training modules were updated in March 2022 to reflect current accessibility requirements. Note the following updates, which supersede some of the information presented in this training video. On slide 8, at 5 minutes 52 seconds, WCAG 2.2 expected completion is now the end of 2022. WCAG 3 expected completion is at least 4 years from now. On slide 9, at 6 minutes 32 seconds, added 2.4 Rev version of the VPAT to the table of VPAT revisions.
So welcome to Module 7 of this VPAT tool training, and we're going to be talking about the ACRs filled out. Now, what do you do? So I'm Michelle Van Duzer, Senior Accessibility Program Manager from Oracle. I'm being assisted by Sam today. Sam, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sam Ogami. I work for HP's Office of Aging and Accessibility.
Great. So back here. Next slide. So this is slide 7, or excuse me, module 7 out of 8 modules. And it's really a good idea to watch all of the modules. Maybe if you're not doing the EN criteria, you can skip module 5, but we really recommend watching all of the modules to gather all of this information. So goal of module 7 is, you got your ACR done. What do you do with it once you've filled it out? And what are the upcoming changes that ITI has in mind for the VPAT? So this is going to actually be a short module for you, give you a break after those longer ones. So the ACR format, we discussed this in module 1, but even though ITI posts the VPAT in a Word document form, you're not required to post your final files in that format. You can do it as an HTML file, a Microsoft Word file, a PDF file. You need to look at how does your company normally handle this kind of reporting and plan the file accordingly. The big key to this, though, is, of course, make sure the file is accessible. Doesn't do your customers any good that you've written this great report describing the accessibility of your product and then you don't make the report accessible. So make it accessible. If your company takes the ITI template and customizes it at all, be sure in making those customizations that that template in turn is accessible for your teams to build from. In doing those templates, you might also have style guides on how things are to be written. You might have actual forms that people can copy, a template, of the template. And just make sure all of those are following accessibility guidelines. If people are inserting images and stuff or tables, make sure they're tagged appropriately and make sure that your examples for your teams are done that way. And then even if your template or your customized source file is accessible, always test to ensure that the final ACR that you're going to give to your customers, that it itself is accessible. We will be posting these slides, and in the notes to this slide, there's actually links to how to make Word documents accessible, how to make PDF accessible, and also how to make HTML accessible. We're not going to go into all of that, but be sure you look up that information. Publishing your ACR. So you've got this available, you've made it all accessible. Now, how are you going to get it to your customer? I've seen a bunch of different ways. ITI doesn't specify how you do this, but do whatever your corporation normally does. Are you going to make it viewable from a website or maybe downloadable from a website so your customers can keep a copy? Is it that you're going to have your customer email you and request a copy of it? Or is it that they have to contact customer support or the sales team to get the ACR? Pick a method, be consistent in how you do it. But again, you know this is coming. Make sure that process itself is accessible. I hate it when people say, oh yeah, it's all accessible. Oh, that login page isn't. Doesn't do you any good. So be sure to make the process accessible and test it. Validate and make sure that everything works right. So what's next for the VPAT? We ITI try to not change the VPAT files that often. Unfortunately, things happen when we do have to do it. So like later this year in 2021, WCAG 2.2 is going to come out. So we're going to have to update the VPAT to pick that up. And then eventually, some unknown time frame. So, you know, we have to keep in mind and update for that. The EN 301549 also does updates on a fairly regular basis. So we'll update the VPAT for that. And we do monitor to see what is going on with other international standards. You know, at this point, everything is really focused on using either the EN or WCAG directly. So we're able to just keep our focus there. But should there be other international requirements that come out that are not harmonized with those two, then we'll have to look into coming up with another edition of the VPAT. So a reminder about some VPATs. You know, as I said, there's a lot of different versions, and as we've talked about, the 4 different editions. So out on the ITI website where you get the actual VPAT files, we also have a change file that helps you to understand what was changed in each version or each edition, if you want to compare them, of the actual VPATs. So I'm not going to read this slide in great detail, but the things I want to flag is, you know, the first version of the VPAT that came out was version 2.0, and we had it as just one file. So it was what we now call the international version. It had the 508, the WCAG, the EN all in one. We didn't actually separate those out until version 2.2. So from 2.2 forward, there's the 4 different flavors of the VPAT files. And if you look at this table, sometimes it'll say no change when a new edition comes out. And quite often, you'll notice the criteria itself did not change. So if your customers are asking you for, I want VPAT, you know, version 2.3, and your company has version 2.4, you might be okay in having the exact information that they're looking for, but it depends on what standard you're reporting on. So for example, 508, it hasn't changed since the 2017 release, which is what triggered VPAT 2.0. So the only change along the way was in the terms. When we released the 2.2 version, we changed to using partially supports instead of supports with exceptions, and we added the TTY criteria that was missing. So if somebody is looking for a 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, they're all the same with regards to Section 508. Not the case with WCAG or the EN criteria, because, you know, WCAG 2.1 came out, so thus things changed. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is, you know, as a company, determine what versions you're going to be using. Highly recommended, always stay with the latest one. But when your customers are asking for a different one, you might need to explain to them what the difference is and why the one you have is appropriate. So just wanted to make sure you guys know that information is available there. So that's it for, you know, what are some things to do with your ACR once it's completed. Of course, we're open for questions via email and phone calls. So you can send email to info@itic.org, or you can call us at 1-202-737-8888. And I'd like to thank the following companies for helping write these presentations and present them. So HP, IBM, Intel, Lexmark, Oracle, and VMware.